Hi everyone, it's Sean here. I want everybody to know this is your last week to put in a pledge to get your copy of John Haynes at Death's Door. The Kickstarter will be ending on Saturday, August 6th. So if you want to pick up a copy of John Haynes at Death's Door in paper or digital format, click the link in the description box and put in your pledge for Kickstarter right now, because this is the last week you will have a chance to pick up your copy of John Haynes at Death's Door. And we have already broken past the second stretch goal, so everybody who has put in a pledge for a paper copy will be getting a John Haynes sticker, and this is your last opportunity to pick up your copy of John Haynes at Death's Door and all of the awesome stretch goal rewards. I want to thank everybody who has put in a pledge for John Haynes at Death's Door, and I'm hoping you'll be there with all of us once we reach the finish line on this Kickstarter for this first John Haynes comic. On Tuesday afternoon, Warner Brothers announced that they were canceling their upcoming Batgirl movie. Now, this Batgirl movie had been announced, I think, about 2 years ago, and it was going to be a part of the DC Extended Universe. And this Batgirl movie was supposed to be designed to be one of those smaller budget projects that was supposed to build the overall world of the DC Extended Universe with one of the smaller characters. That was the plan under Warner Brothers at the time, which was run by AT&T. However, once Warner Brothers got bought out by Your Discovery and got put under the leadership of David Zaslav, he has decided to go in a different direction with the whole DC cinematic universe, and he wasn't interested in making these small films that would build out the world of the DC Extended Universe. No, he wanted to make films that were bigger budget and set for theatrical release. So that's one of the reasons why the Batgirl film got canceled and why we won't be seeing this Batgirl film on any platform, including theaters, HBO Max, or television or direct to video. Now, this Batgirl film, starring Leslie Grace as Barbara Gordon and Batgirl, Michael Keaton as Batman, and your Brendan Fraser as Firefly, was test screened to sample audiences, and the sample audiences had a very negative reaction to the film, and the negative reaction to the film was another one of the reasons why the studio has decided not to release the film. According to insiders, the film was considered irredeemable, and once they considered it irredeemable, that's when they went and did the go-ahead to cancel the movie. Now, as someone who has studied the entertainment industry for over 30 years, I can tell you that if a studio is canceling a film, that means that that film is absolutely terrible. Because a studio, even if a film is mediocre at best, they will still try to release a film in order to try to generate some box office revenue off of that film. However, if you have a film that a studio executive is calling it irredeemable and is talking about canceling the film, that means that that film is absolutely horrible, and the studio doesn't want to invest any more money into it because in the long term, they believe that they're going to lose even more money if they go out here and spend more money on this film. Now, this Batgirl film has had over $90 million spent right now on its production budget, and that's a huge budget when you consider a superhero film. I mean, $90 million, and then if the studio poured another $90 million into this film for advertising and possible distribution, they were looking at possibly losing over $200 or $300 million, and that's why the studio execs like David Zaslav have said they want to stop throwing good money after bad, because if you've had test screenings and the test screenings are coming out with people saying it's terrible and studio executives are saying the film is irredeemable, then they have to cut the losses on the film before they wind up becoming a major money pit for the studio. Now, your Batgirl is one of DC's high value intellectual properties, and I can understand why they wanted to cancel this movie, because you don't want to do something to further tarnish one of your characters that is considered to be one of your more popular characters, and you don't want to do damage to the brand of that character. And in order to protect the brand, sometimes you have to take a short-term loss in order to get a long-term gain. And that's what's being done here with the Batgirl movie. They're willing to take a $90 million loss on the movie in order to protect the character's reputation, the character's image, and the character's brand. And the reason why they want to do that is because your Batgirl sells a lot of merchandise for DC Comics. She's a fairly popular character still, and she still has a good following with DC's fan base, and they don't want to further alienate the fan base of DC Comics fans by going out here and producing a movie that would damage the character's brand. I mean, DC Comics has suffered a lot of losses over the last decade and a half with the destruction of its DC universe, and a lot of their characters have suffered over the last 15 years as related to merchandising, and the last thing they want to do is launch another movie that would be a box office bomb like 2004's Catwoman that starred Halle Berry. Now, 2004's Catwoman starring Halle Berry was a box office failure, but that film was primarily made due to in-studio politics. Now, back in 1994, the studio wanted to make a Catwoman movie with Michelle Pfeiffer. The film had been greenlit. However, Michelle Pfeiffer passed on the project, and Warner Brothers spent a lot of money on that film's development, and they were looking for an actress to star in the role, and many actresses wound up passing on the role after reading how terrible the script was, until the producers got Halle Berry to sign on the dotted line. And after Halle Berry signed on the dotted line, the producers got all of their money to make this film. And after making this film that cost over $100 million, the studio wound up losing a lot of money in the short run and the long run. And I guess Warner Brothers has learned from its mistakes from the 2004 Catwoman movie, where the Patience Phillips character, who wasn't connected to the source material, did a lot of damage to the brand of Catwoman, and many comic fans were calling it her Catwoman in name only. And I guess they learned the lesson from the failure of Warner Brothers' Catwoman and 2004, and that's why they're canceling the Batgirl movie, and they're realizing that it's just better to eat $90 million rather than go out here and make a film that won't get a return on the initial budget and advertising costs, and making a film that will damage a character's brand and reputation. So they've learned their lesson from 2004, and that's probably why this Batgirl movie is being shelved and will never be seen, because they're just at Warner Brothers, I believe, under David Zaslav, he's tired of taking losses on projects that just don't go out here and are worth the viewer's time. Now, as I see it, the Warner Brothers superhero movie division is in bad shape, and this is just the first of a major loss as related to the studio. I believe they might possibly wind up shelving other movies, like possibly the Blue Beetle movie, or they might possibly shelve the upcoming Flash movie due to Ezra Miller's off-screen behavior. And I believe the studio might have to take big losses, and they might take another $50 or $60 million loss on Blue Beetle, and they might take another $200 million loss on The Flash. It's a lot of big losses for Warner Brothers, and in the short term, it looks like they're losing money, but this could help them rebuild the brands as related to DC's superheroes, because your DC superheroes are in really bad shape creatively due to the jumbled vision of the DC extended universe and the fact that many of the films did not really connect the way the audiences did with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So canceling these films in the short term may take a big loss for your Warner Brothers and DC, but if they can go under David Zaslav, go out here and cancel these films and then regroup and make better films, they may be able to redefine the 2020s as the decade of DC, because I believe long term it would be better to cancel some of these bad movies rather than go out here, release them, alienate the audience, and further tarnish the reputation of DC Comics, which has been suffering ever since your 2011, when your Dan Didio launched the New 52 and your DC Extended Universe started producing films with your that was later on with Man of Steel, but the whole DC brand has been damaged at this point, and just killing some of these films, yes, it may feel like a loss as related to $90 million, but it's better again to not release a garbage movie and watch it get roasted and cooked by YouTubers than release it, take a loss, and suffer all of the embarrassment your DC Comics and Warner Brothers have suffered over the course of the Berlantiverse, as we've watched the Berlantiverse basically fall completely apart due to them continuing to push identity politics and social justice. And maybe it's just time that we just put an end to the DC Extended Universe, because they've already announced that there's no more films coming out after Comic-Con. So ending this movie, ending the Blue Beetle movie, and ending the Flash movie and putting them on the shelf might be better for the brand, because now you can start focusing on developing a rebuild of the DC universe, and possibly creating a new DC universe might possibly give new audience and new viewers to see the DC characters and see a bright, hopeful, and optimistic DC universe that builds up on screen. And if they're talking about making it about being theatrical movies, that would possibly make them able to go out here to make products that will allow them to compete with the MCU. And starting off with a fresh slate would be a good thing for your Warner Brothers at this point, because the films that are coming out, you got the dark versions on the of the Snyderverse. Then you've got the Shazam movie, which is bright and hopeful. Then you've got the Wonder Woman and Aquaman movies, which are in the DC Extended Universe, but their tones are completely different. So the Snyderverse was really a jumbled place, and it really didn't capture that heart and spirit of the DC Universe from many of the classic comics. So I believe a reset is in place for the DC Extended Universe, and that reset possibly is starting right now with the cancellation of the Batgirl movie, which was basically not going to be a good movie anyway, because it's said that this movie was going to be filled with social justice narratives, identity politics, and things that were not going to be appealing to audiences. So just canceling this movie, eating the $90 million, that's the only thing you can do with this movie. Now, the last time I heard of a movie like this getting shelved was Brenda Starr back in the 80s, starring Brooke Shields, and it turned out that that was the best decision that was ever made, because the film was absolutely terrible, and they released the movie later on, about 1990 or so, but once it was released, everybody saw how terrible it was. And again, these things are done for a reason, because if the studio has an audience that's telling them that the movie is terrible, then they realize that, hey, we've got to eat these costs and we've got to move on. and whatever executive who greenlit this garbage, they're going to be fired, and they're just going to move on and try to learn better the next time. Now, this Batgirl movie had to be some kind of terrible for the studio to shelve it. And if you've got a movie this bad, then it's practically unwatchable at this point. And if it's this unwatchable, then you don't know what we're going to be seeing. And again, that they'd rather go out here and take that short-term loss than take a long-term embarrassment that tarnishes the studio and tarnishes the brand of these characters. So when I look at this whole cancellation of this movie, it's the best thing to happen to DC Comics, and long-term, it's what will help save the DC brand overall and save it so that other generations can enjoy these characters in higher quality product that DC could possibly produce in the future. Now, my Kickstarter for my comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, has 2 days to go, and if you want to put in a pledge to get a copy of that comic, do it as soon as possible by clicking a link in the description box. And if you want to pick up my books featuring heroines like the Isis series, the E-Steam series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, you can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format, and Smashwords, the iBook store, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Give in to temptation and pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today.